have another math note. So math notes is their way of getting you more information about certain math topics, okay? So today's topic is writing the equation of a line from a graph or a table. Do I have a volunteer to read the first paragraph right there, starting with to write the equation? Brandon. Okay, so that's our super important equation, our y equals mx plus b. We've got two important numbers that are going to go in there. That would be m is where you write your slope, and b is where you write your y-intercept. For example, the slope of the line at right is m equals 1/3. How did they get the 1/3? They drew a slope triangle and they counted the change in y and got 1. Then they counted the change in x and got 3. So that is 1/3. That's your slope. And we have a y-intercept of 0, 2, right here at this point right here. Okay? You can read more about that if you look in your math notes in lesson 2.1.4. Okay? So we're going to substitute the 1/3 in for the slope and 2 in for the y-intercept into the y equals mx plus b equation, and we get y equals 1/3 x plus 2. All right, a volunteer to read the next paragraph that starts with conversely. Conversely. Amanda, you need to take your hood off in class. Dominique.
Conversely,
Ali, can you not talk while other people are talking? Thank you. Keep going.
Move down 3 units and to the right 3 units because the slope and equal to because the unit and the unit is another point. You can continue to add additional functions and to the right 3 units. Then extend the line and both units.
Great job. Thank you for reading. All right. So in this picture over at the right, they've drawn a line. Notice that they extend it to the edges of the coordinate plane. Okay. So if you take this equation, you can make a T-chart, but you don't necessarily need to. Why? Because they give you all the information that you need. This 4 is the y-intercept. So you go along the y-axis, you put a point at +4. That equation also tells you the slope, which is -3/2. So the change in the y value is down 3, and the change in the x value is over 2. Okay, so you go down 3 units and to the right 3 units. We call that delta y over delta x. All right? One more volunteer to read this last paragraph that starts with to write the equation. One more volunteer. You want to read it? Right here, where it says to write.
To write the equation of a line from a table that has x values that increase by 1. Find the change in y value between any two entries in the table. The slope is
Delta y.
delta 1.
Delta y.
Delta y. Intercept is the table where the x value is 0. For example, in the table at the right, the slope is m equals 1.5, and the y-intercept is -4. The equation is y equals 1.5 times -4. Later in the chapter, you will write equation implies from tables where the x values do not necessarily equal their 1.
Good job. Thank you for reading. Okay, so what you're going to notice in this table is that in the y column, guys, can you not talk while I'm is that the y value is not changing by just 1. From -5 to -4.5 is only 0.5, okay? But the next number is -4. So I'm going to go from this point to this point. So you're going to put like a little bump over here from -5 to -4. That change is 1 unit. Okay, same thing happens from -4 to -3. So just draw a little bump to show that you're skipping 1, and that change is also 1. That means that your delta y, or your change in your y values, is going to be 1. Okay? In the x column, you also have to draw a little bump, because if you jumped over here, you got to jump over here. So from -2 to 0 is a change of 2. And from 0 to 2 is also a change of 2. So your delta x, or your change in x, is 2. And if we were asked to write the slope as a change in y over the change in the x, or delta y delta x, we get 1/2. So from a table, you could also get the equation of the line. This one also happens to have our y-intercept. How do I know that this point right here is the y-intercept? What's the big clue? It has a 0, right? There's a point at 0, -4. That's the y-intercept. All right? Now you're going to turn back 2 pages in your packet to page 17. On page 17 is the lesson we're going to look at today, which is 2.2.2. It's called Rate of Change, Day 2. Yesterday we did Day 1, where we had the tricycle race. Today we're going to be talking about other rates of change other than just speed or distance, okay? How fast someone's going. So the directions here say the slope of a line can represent many things. In this lesson, you concentrated on situations where the rate of change of a line, the slope, represented speed. How fast the ladies or the girls were riding those tricycles, right? So rate of change can represent many other things besides just speed, depending on the situation. For each graph that we're about to look at, name what the real world quantities, the slope, and the y-intercept represent. Then we're going to calculate the unit and include the units in our answer, okay? They don't always want you to write what the units are, but in this case, it's kind of important, all right? So on the first graph, which is A, we're going to look at this graph right here. It's really hard to see because they don't have the grids in there, but on the y-axis, our y is changing by what?
Numbers.
Well, it tells us specifically in words. What do the words say? Over here, on the y-axis, it's labeled with what? What does it say?
3 feet.
That does not say 3 feet. What does it say?
Height.
Height of a tree in what? Feet, okay? It's the height of the tree in feet. So it's giving us how tall a tree is, okay? On the x-axis, what does it say? Years. So every year that you have a tree, what's the tree going to do? It's going to grow, okay? It's going to grow so many feet every year that you own it. So when it asks you what does the slope of the line represent, it's going to represent how many feet per year that it's growing, okay? So feet per year that it's growing. On the next line, it's asking you for the y-intercept. And there was a hole punch right there. The hole punch underneath there, it should say y-intercept. The y-intercept, where it's crossing right there, is where the height of the tree began. Okay? Then it asks for what is the unit rate. what is this particular one growing by? It's growing up 2 to 1. So if you draw a little slope triangle in there, you're going to write, and I tried to write it really small, 2 to 1. So it's changing in the y value by 2 feet for every 1 year. Okay? Any questions on graph A? All right, now let's look at graph B. So on graph B, we've got this guy. All right? So on graph B, we're looking at what is changing on the y-axis. You're going to read the words over there. What do the words say? Bank balance, okay? What do you have in your bank? Money, dollar bills, right? Bills, how much money is in the bank, okay? That's how your y-axis is changing. You come back. Yeah, okay. And then the x-axis, how is the x-axis changing? In months, okay? So this person's bank balance, how much money they have in there, is changing every month. What do you notice about this line?
Going down.
It's going down. Is that good?
Yes.
Well, it's not good if you plan to pay your bills and buy things, right? Okay, so this person is losing money each month. They either need to stop spending so much money or work more to make more money. Something's got to change, okay? So here's what it's asking you. What does the slope represent in this case? So it's the y-axis over the x-axis, which is the money in the account over months, okay? Then it's asking what does the Y-intercept represent? It represents the beginning balance, right? You go to the bank and you want to open a bank account. What do they expect you to give them? Money, okay? You can't just go in there with no money and say, I would like to open a bank account. What are they going to tell you? They're going to say, come back when you've got some money, okay? All right. This person's unit rate is negative $10 every month, okay? So if you draw in a slope triangle, you're going down 10 and over 1. Going down 10 and over 1. All right? Then we've got a third graph. So let's look at our graph C. What is on the y-axis? Miles, okay? How far you traveled or the distance that you go in miles. What does the x-axis say? How many gallons of gas do you have, okay? So that's going to be your slope. Your slope is going to be the distance in miles over how many gallons of gas you have. So the next question is going to ask you, what does the y-intercept represent? Notice where this one's at. Where's it at? 0. What does that mean? It means you don't have any gas. You're not going to go anywhere. No gas, no going. Okay? The third question is, what is the unit rate? Okay? Your slope triangle should tell you that your y value is changing by 22 and your x value is by 1. Okay? So you're going to go 22 miles for every gallon of gas you have. That's pretty average for a car. Some are better, some are worse, depending on if, they're a hybrid or whatever. Okay, but 22 miles per every 1 gallon. And then if you see how much gas costs, you're going to go, oh, I can't afford this. All right? Any questions on part C? Okay, one more question. Part D, in each of these situations, would it make sense to draw a different line with a negative y-intercept? Okay, can your tree be negative 3 feet tall? No, the smallest it could be is a seed, right? You've got to have at least a seed, and then it's got to have roots, and then it's got to start growing up. So it wouldn't make sense. How about, could you start your bank account with negative $50? Could you go to the bank and say, I'd like to open an account, and can you give me $50 to start?